Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's the 22nd of May, 2025. And if you're not laughing at the insanity, I do not know what's wrong with you. It is an absolute comedy show out there in whatever realm you decide to pay any attention to. And such is the times. We're going to get into a few things this evening that might be a little bit prickly, but I reckon they're of importance. The reason why they'll be a bit prickly, because let's face it, we have all been subject to the best programming that money can buy. And if we are unable to see it, it is affecting us. And if we're unable to laugh at it, well, there's a good chance that we're going to have our Zealot ideology activated and then get caught up into the Gynoentric Hydra, which is the algorithm of my team win or lose, and let me have a reaction about the news. And then when someone has a reaction to that, I'll create another reaction and play this childlike schoolyard psychology, which is really just noise. You know, the words sovereignty and authentic get thrown up a lot, but this is where the butt hurt gets pretty quick, is that how much of the algorithm is actually running what people discuss and don't discuss. So if you want to jump on the sovereign expression pathway that many have, grab those words and regurgitate, well, I beg to differ, sir, because are you posting to get a dopamine response from the algo and playing the algorithm game? Or you actually have no filter and a bit of an outlaw and actually contribute something? Or is it really just recycled, parroted noise to play into probably the biggest game in town, which no one wants to fucking talk about, is that we're all in a silo and a Skinner box. And 90% of the time, it's actually the machine or the algorithm doing our thinking. And that's not an easy one to chew on and swallow at all. Such is the programming. And if we want to take it a step further, which I will, because I spoke about this a couple of years ago, no one really went into any detail about it. And there's a reason for that too. But you guys can make your own conclusions to that. But we hear a lot around frequencies and I mentioned the term frequency wars, and we could think of it as planes in the sky dropping some things. We can point at 5G, we can point at the media, we can point at all the rest of these things. And aren't I being a good boy today because my phone isn't in my vicinity? The number one frequency device is you have it on you all the time. And Sean Ryan done a podcast with, I should have actually written it down, but he runs one of the biggest private militaries in the world. And he spoke about how phones do uploads at 2 o'clock every morning and send all of your metadata, and got into details actually about that. So your phone, your frequency control device, knows everything about you. And from an emotional loading and psychic driving platform, how much of how we're actually perceiving reality is actually very real. Is it actually have anything to do with our day-to-day living, and how much of it is really to keep you and everybody else in this fragmented and distorted state where commentary about something and the reactionary content that fuels the algorithm is actually worth anything. And here's one of these evaluation pieces that really need to be thrown on the table for everybody, almost front and center. it will make your life a lot easier. You've heard me use terminology in the past, 4 to 5 years with position accordingly. Well, positioning accordingly, knowing where your center is and actually seeing, what kind of rabbit hole or where the fun actually leads you in these frequency control devices. Is it actually really worth anything? And what actually is it are you spending you give a fuck bucks on? Because if it is in algorithm warfare, well, what actually is it are you really doing? We hear the words within the personal development world at the moment where it's all shadow work, it's all the rest of this inner work, which is great. But I can say with a fair amount of fact is a majority of those people in the real world underneath the high sun, before they built a platform on social media, I would beg to differ that they were a salesperson at Foot Locker, because whenever they're reality tested, they seem to be looking at fucking shoes quite often. And I only wear Air Force Ones, but they all seem to be pretty interested in that type of stuff. And if that don't work, it reverts to the Britchcraft, as if someone has a PhD in psychology where it's you're projecting, you're this, you're that, you need to blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I don't need to do shit. I just kind of asked you a question and you filibustered it with your emotional nonsense. Do you actually know the words that you speak, or is it a performative act into the algorithm that has reinforced a pseudo version of you that you have bought into? But outside of that agency, what agency do you have in the real world? And majority of the time, it's fucking donuts. You can laugh at that, but it's true, and I say this with some type of respect, because it's on my priority list to make sure that I keep myself in check with that, because I know what I'm like, really. And yeah, I can come across as possibly a little bit arrogant, but I also understand one prime criteria have for a long period of time. And I could go, oh yeah, I've been lucky, but I've, really invested in serious mentors and have assets at my disposal that have the full reins to give me a fucking reality check, even if it's a little bit of a backhander, so that I've got some type of equilibrium to be able to test the boundaries, but have someone else who has my best nature in heart. And the other thing as well in the dude space is that men see themselves in other men. Yeah, I'll repeat that: men see themselves in other men. And if you go one further, men see themselves in younger men. And if they do, well, it can bring a man to life. When it comes to women, women see themselves as younger women continually. But that's a whole other subject. We'll get into that shortly. But where I was going with that is that you can go and do all the rest of the personal development, shadow work, and all the rest of these things, which are really relevant, yeah, all inner workings. But if you can't translate that out into the real world, well, who actually is doing your thinking and which game are you playing? Because I would beg to differ that many folks have been caught in the blue light saloon, which is this technology, almost like a Black Mirror effect. And, you're able to scoot around with performative language that is almost virtue woundology language for a game of control. And whenever you need a dopamine hit to keep that pseudo actually going, it's relatively quite easy. You can't actually really be reality tested with somebody in front of you. And where I was getting to before is that in the landscape that we're in at the moment, and Uncle Jack's chili is always hot to eat, but I highly recommend that you do listen to that man. um he made reference, which was brilliant because it gave me language to something, which I love, is that we're all on a sliding scale of ignorance and fraud now. We all are, right? And that's just the stage of the game. As the programming breaks apart, the social contract breaks apart, and everyone is really starting to begin to see who's who in the zoo and seeing the own games that they've subscribed and bought into. Like, it's just fact. Yeah, let's have a fucking laugh about it and draw a line in the sand and go, okay, cool, that's what it is, that's what it was, let's fucking move on, shall we, and have a laugh about it. But many folks have got caught up into their zealotry. And the thing about ignorance, we can go, ignorance is the path of the dark side. Yeah, well, absolutely. But with ignorance, if you really are into developing your own character, ignorance is beautiful because there is a beginner's luck type of attitude to it. You do know your own ignorance. And more time often than not, it's really not until you have a conversation with somebody who is an adept or has some subject matter expertise that you're able to bounce off with, that you have a genuine respect for someone's unique ability to go into the minutia, into the details of whatever subject that is. Now, I've probably cut from a little bit of a different cloth to most out there. Because back in my day, when you didn't respect your elders, you got a nice fucking clip around the ears, which seems to be quite necessary these days for all of us. But even if it's subjects that you have no interest in, when someone is giving you the opportunity to break it down and build it out, from a place of reasoning, like, there is more than the conversation actually going on. Like, it for me, that's the marrow and the beauty of the human experience, when someone in their own mastery, where they've put time, effort, gone into the labyrinth and the gymnasium of the mind to really break themselves down, open themselves up, and look at a subject or a craft for that matter, or anything really, and taking that to a whole other level. And yeah, there's can be some heated discussions at times, but within that gymnasium, there's an alchemy that really, really takes place. And in the landscape that we're in right now, with whose game are you and I playing as a Townsqaure programming and social contracts break apart? Well, it really comes down to a choice, doesn't it? Or And what are those choices? Well, ultimately, I've been on record for saying this. 2020 to 2024 was the first part of the changeover years. We fucking done pretty good. Like, seriously, if you move all the Jerry Springer commentary and truth attainment out of the way, well, have a measure of yourself, and you're like, actually, we're kind of doing okay. And a lot of silent truths are being yelled and screamed at across the social order. Fucking awesome. For me, it doesn't matter if they're true, if they're false, or whatever it is that the conversations are at least being had, which is, and probably for me, a brilliant component to the psychological fallout, which I can get into a little bit more detail today, because there's a little bit more road behind us to sit there and evaluate it from a societal perspective, a world stage, but also the way that we're kind of navigating that too. The psychological fallout really is looking at things, and yeah, the Jerry Springers are just going to do the Jerry Springer stuff. Like, whatever, have fun with that. And what type of perception war or battlefields that we all kind of decide to jump into. and how much of that is engineered by the machine doing our thinking that is tied now to our nervous system and our dopamine receptors. You know, a lot of folks seem to be subject matter experts when it comes to transhumanism, but can't actually articulate or even explain the wetware programming that has been installed now for over a decade. And a lot of that has essentially been uploaded into us. Like, it's a big game. But that psychological fallout is creating, you know, matrices of delusion. And within those matrix of delusion, there is that sliding scale of ignorance and fraud across the board. One example I will give, which I highly recommend that you grab this for your own discernment, because it's almost like wordplay now, where someone can go, oh, I've done my research and my research concludes this. And it's like, okay, great. They're great words, but can you actually articulate how you went about your research? Reality test that shit, because if their first reaction is to attack or play this bitchcraft language game, well, what type of conversation are we having here? Because ultimately what that kind of means in the Townsqaure, when someone says they did their research, well, they already had a bias in mind and went and looked and found information that confirmed their bias and their level of intelligence to confirm that. And that's essentially it. There has not been any what's the best way of simplifying this? There has been any real training, or they don't even really ask the question for that matter, to build out what they're actually looking for. So when it comes to research, you know, there's many different ways you can go about it, but you want to know the unknowns, yeah? The subject matter expertise, experts, where their frame of reference is, where they actually were able to build out stuff from, and are there actual any social studies, or how did they come to that conclusion? If you can't, and if you're not interested in going into that, you're not doing research at all. And we have a matrix of illusion out there in the Townsqaure of the blue light saloon, where it's very easy to listen to a couple of hours of YouTube and then decide that that's going to be what I'm going to speak about now, and turn on the camera and regurgitate some things. One in particular that's very easy is that everyone has a PhD in narcissism now, don't they? But isn't it funny that a study came out a while ago that 1% of the population actually has narcissism, and it's relatively 50-50 when it comes to male and females. Interesting, that one, isn't it? You know, I follow that type of stuff. But what I have found rather disappointing is that there are some folks out there in the influencer space that buy into the gynocentric Hydra, which is all based around women wonderful syndrome, and have a platform of utilizing language with emotionalism. They've utilized that study, and some of them have even utilized it in a provocative sense, but they purposefully leave something out, and they leave out that last bit, don't they? That's kind of 50-50 both ways. And even the study goes into further kind of details about that. But a lot of folks don't choose that, do they? Because their whole sense of agency in the online space is placating to a emotionalism language within the platforms and the gynocentric Hydra. So when a lot of those folks are talking from a place of authority, well, on the spectrum of fraud and ignorance, did they purposely leave out that detail because it would affect how their audience that is geared towards more emotionalism and women wonderful? Or did they purposely do it in such a way that it was provocative victim to get the comments rolling in, but then sit on a zealot spiritual high horse or whatever else that is, but then point the finger and go and sit there and want to attack everybody in their own commentary to verify their own delusion and sense of grandeur upon they actually have some type of knowledge. It's an interesting space, that one, because if you were to really evaluate it, who were they before they got popular on social media? That story seems to never really come out, does it? And a lot of folks' sense of authority comes from my experience, my truth, or my intuition. Okay, they're all great. But in a game of reasoning, in actually reality testing and debating something out, they fall fucking flat on their face, and then it turns into the same type of bitchcraft game. And I actually stole that word bitchcraft from a book called The Satanic Witch. I advise a lot of people to actually go and read that, because you'll have a laugh and go, wow, this looks like it just got uploaded straight into the algorithm. And go and look who the author actually is of that. It's an interesting read. So that's where I got Bitchcraft from, because it encompasses a platform of emotional manipulating, but also the language control. And now that we have a Townsqaure that is addicted to Woundology, and Zealot ideology within that, with grabbing words they don't actually understand the meaning of, or what's another way of putting it? Their message or their brand has moved so far off their original intent that there's a defense mechanism whenever they're actually challenged. And if they were who they say they were in relation to growth and development and all the other criterias with that, well, you want to be challenged. You want to actually, enter the mental gymnasium, have your ways of thinking and adapting actually challenged out there underneath the sun in the real world, not this blue screen saloon utopia where the succubus with bolt-ons, jumps on beta male spines every Thursday night for a strip tease, and then by Monday he's making a video or another thing about how men are blah 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 blah, but they're setting actually up the script, the platform, and it's all performative based upon what exactly? To get some of that digital dope in. How you decide to interact or to play or even see that is entirely up to you. 2025 is time of choices, yeah? And within that, there's so many things, the sci fallout, the frequency wars, the perception wars, but ultimately the choice is the filters upon how we have even weaponized ourselves to fit into conversations, how we've mimicked our behavior, our own programs, beliefs, and perceptions. They are all a choice. Once you see them, it is a choice then, isn't it? And to think that you're just going to do some type of clearing or some 10-minute breath work or, all the rest of the things that are, relevant, but it's a choice. And within that choice, are you choosing to come from here through without the filters and the perceptions of fear of, if I say this, therefore these people are going to react, or they need me to do this, or all the rest of these me games? Yeah. Whereas one's values, principles, and the way that they actually go about it consistent within a resonant tone of how they're actually able to hold their frame and in their center. It is all a choice. Yeah, it's even a choice to react. Yeah, ultimately, everything comes down to that. We can define into meaning or break it down from many different psychological versions, get into the woo, he said, she said, all the rest of it. But ultimately, it's all kind of a choice. We're all on the clock now. If you are looking at the world purely upon seeing it as it is, without the lenses of your own programs, beliefs, and perceptions, well, you're going to have more choices available to you, because then it's like, well, where am I actually spending my give a fuck bucks? And where is my intent? Where is my will? Am I able to put things in place to keep my mind clear from a lot of the nonsense that I don't need to subscribe to or even entertain? Because everything out there in a information type game, which is moving more into knowledge and wisdom, which is absolutely fantastic. But once again, they're actually a choice, isn't it? But with inside this game, and it's a choice, is that would you, because everyone would when they're given this ticket, yeah? If someone tapped you on the shoulder and said, hey, there's a door right there, you can walk in that door, and in that door is absolutely everything that is 100% real. But when you walk out the other side, you're not going to be the same person. Everyone would go, yeah, 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 I'll take that ticket. But many wouldn't leave the room, because we're not actually interested in what is real. We're only interested in what we want to be real. The same as the truth, which is an interesting one at the moment. And I'm just not saying this out of talking out of my ass. I've gone and asked a lot of other people who I respect, who have a higher degree of knowledge and experience inside psychological warfare programs and understanding what that's all about. And when I've had a yarn to them and, bounce back off with a few things, it becomes really, really apparent when it comes to truth, particularly in the COVID era, because we have a situation across the social order is that many folks say they want the truth, but they're caught in the Jerry Springer version of it, because it's not the truth they're actually after. They need to be validated. They need someone to pat them on the back and say, yeah, you were right about this. So I'm going to say something here that isn't going to be pretty. And it has to do with everyone's favorite person at the moment, and it has to do with Jeffrey Epstein, okay? Everyone wants the Epstein list out, yeah? Yelling and screaming, Epstein list, Epstein list, Epstein list. And if they don't do it, it means this. And even Dan Bongino and Cash coming out saying, well, he did kill himself and blah, 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 blah. You're not going to get it the way that you want it. It's just not going to happen. If you know the way that the world works and what that operation has been about, is Jeffrey Epstein was an asset for not just Mossad, but a whole range of different things that bled itself into academia. It's very big. And I will do something in the next period of time to break that down, because it does get into weaponized psychology. It goes across the board. But I'm going to give you something here, okay? Let's say you had all of that data, all of it. You knew who was who in the zoo, where all the money went, who was actually running other projects and programs out of that, who was running the hunt, who was honeypotted, who was blackmailed, all of it. Would you waste it on just throwing it out there into the public, Or would you be utilizing that as a negotiation tool for a period of time as you're trying to move the world from one system into another? And those people that have held positions of negating that and taking the world in another direction, by you holding that and utilizing that as a weapon, that they can't move in their realm anymore. Would you do that as a strategy? The answer to that would be yes. Okay. Same as the 2020 stuff, the same as a lot of the COVID stuff, the same as a lot of other things that are out there in silent truth world. Okay. It's kind of known. Everyone's yelling and screaming about it. Awesome. But you're not actually really understanding the power dynamics that are going on both backside and front side at the moment with these tools that are essentially negotiation tools. Now, we could be looking at the world right now and it's the this, it's the that, but you're going to have to just wait and see as we get more momentum into the rolling events. Because with the rolling events, is that if you have a maverick attitude and you're seeing things as they actually are, you're seeing the opportunity that is there. And like, I don't agree with this at all, but it is what it is. A lot of what you're seeing in the media and even in the social media realms at the moment is all a test and measuring exercise like this to see which way that the wind is actually blowing, to get as many folks in the different silos to a position to then engage into systems changeover, which ultimately is the next, 2026 to 2030. But within this choice point right now, you and I actually have the choice to see things as they are being presented, or do we want to fall back into our own programs, beliefs, and perceptions? Or it's the chemtrails, it's the this, it's all of the things. If they were just removed, our lives would be absolutely better. And at the end of the day, how much of that has any real bearing on the big game that is in town, that we are in system changeover? And the what would we class them of? The families that have played the game of blood and thrones, they are not in a position to bring forward what it was that they needed to. They failed. Okay. But things actually need to play themselves out. And I'm going to say another thing here, that I had some emails and I had some messages where people are like, oh, you're a shill, all the rest of it. Cool, dude, no problem. You're another one of those cats that if you were in the presence of me, you'd just be more interested in my Air Force Ones. But anyway, the 15-minute city situation, you need to have a look at that. And if you're looking at from a management point of view, when it comes to a society with the rolling events, the changeovering of systems, the implementation of technology, how does that actually work? And the way things are going across the Western world is that, yeah, it does look like chaos, but ultimately it's pushing people into a decision to take control back of their local area. And this was said to me first, it was about, it was over 12 months ago now. My old mate turned around to me and said, even before COVID, okay, but let's just use COVID as an instance. If you take out someone's travel to and from work and a couple of their recreational trips, do you think that they left their own 15-minute zone? I'm like, not really. He's like, so the psychological component has already been in place for that for a long, long time. So has the technology. You got to see that roll out with the biometrics and all the rest of that with COVID. Now, if you were to look at it from a black hat kind of perspective, you all know what and where that was really headed. But if you were to look at it and pivot that a little bit to giving more ability for local communities to actually start to come together, and through that you're going to actually see who the real leaders are, the people who actually really care, and through the social contract breaking apart, um, who would actually be the right leaders, the right stakeholders, and the right people to nurture a community back to how a community once upon a time supported itself. And you could go, well, Grant, you're speaking some pie in the sky stuff. Well, a lot of that stuff's already happening in the US. It's already happening in self-organizing collectives around Australia and even in Europe. It's great. That there is taking time. So it's a choice, isn't it, to actually start to look at things in relation to that and actually see the solutions to a lot of the problems when the red tape really just starts to fall apart, which it kind of is that you've got a new game to actually be participating in or even upskilling yourself now. Or do you want to keep yelling and screaming into this that is actually doing absolutely nothing except some outrage value, where it's all the rest of the things, but nothing actually really tangible is getting done, is it? Like, some might say I'm a bit of a smart ass with this one, okay? And I'll leave you guys with this. Yeah, and to be 100% honest, I'm probably a couple of months overdue for a handout. Not I need a handout, but chopping someone out. Everyone has an opinion or outrage with what's going on in, let's say, Yemen, even though that's a proxy war with China, but move that on, with what's going on in the Congo, what's going on in South Africa, what's going on in Gaza, kind of all over the world, yelling and screaming, almost champion it like, they're Gandhi incarnate on the social media. But if you were to ask them, do you spend any of your hard-earned money to feed a hungry mouth? Do you actually do anything to assist some people in relation to that? Even at Christmas time, Woolies and at Coles where they have the Christmas tree. Did you just $50, even if it's like underwear or anything like that? Did you do any of that? Have you done any of that? Have you actually exerted energy into something tangible in the real world? And more often than not, the answer is no. Disappointing. But the echo chamber and the self-importance within performancing on these fucking platforms, you would think everybody is Saint Mary or some type of beneficiary of they do these things, and they do not. And once again, this is actually a very important component of this next period of time. Are you in an alignment with your mind, your actions, your will from your heart, and your words? How are they in an actual accordance when it comes to, let's say, a frequency or high vibe or all the rest of it? Because talk is cheap. Where the fuck are we as, first and foremost, an individual on an internal level with a heart that cares and has compassion, and also externally with actually doing something? It's a big game. And here are these choices, because it's all good and well. It's all very easy to, it's a this, it's that, it's a do, great. in the real world, in the world of action, underneath the sun at high noon, when you're outside of the blue light saloon, where no one is watching, are you able to do that? Or everything you do needs to be recorded because it needs to be validated as some type of performance? Big choice, isn't it? Now, I will leave you with this one. And I actually have it on my phone. I watch it every now and then when when Satan or a demon just taps me on the shoulder and whispers sweet bullshit into my ears. You know, I like to have little reminders, you know, because you need to face your demons. But there's a video of there's a man he's got a Lamborghini. Good on him. The outlaw statement. But he takes a kid who has, I think he has like cerebral palsy or something, and his dream is just to be in a Ferrari. Like it's in a Ferrari. You might have seen this video. And this kid, you know, he's all over the place, and old mate gives it a kick in the ass, you know, and he goes back in his seat, and you see the joy in this kid's face. Yeah. Now, there's a lot of talk out there about men sharing their emotions and their vulnerability and all the rest of it, more so from a female gynocentric Hydra sense. You show that video to a man and watch him, because men see themselves in younger men. And when you have a look at the dude who's driving the Lamborghini, you look at his face, you see he understood then of how grateful he is with his life, but look at how much joy he just brought someone into giving him a ride in his Lambo and giving him a kick in the ass. Now the kid who's there, you know, he's all over the place, yeah, and he's apologizing because he's just so excited, you know. It's those little gestures that is the strength, yeah, of who we are, all other bullshit aside. And if you've got an opportunity to bring a smile or to do something, that's light work. That's God's work. If you want to go and put that shit on social media or need some type of doctrine or whatever to have an external reflection upon your deed, you were doing the work of what would be regarded as the dark side of the force, because it's fucking performative. Now, here are these choices that we have here now on the great checkerboard of life and the thousand shades of grey. You get to see who is who in the zoo, which is fantastic. All the best to all of them. But inside your own values, principles, and the constitution and codex upon which you live by, are you able to push that forward? That there is the testament of the fucking times. So all of the other, it's all a big game. And whose game are you and I actually playing? And that is my send-off for this evening. And to give it a little bit of a plug, it might look like I've been absent. I've been busy in multiple different arenas. And if you guys have been listening to me for a long period of time, I'm not one to fuck about. Men of Knowledge, Mega Skilled, I will be plugging that in the next little period of time. So for the lads, there's one for you. And through feedback that I've had, and this goes out to the lads that don't comment and don't like, which is perfectly fine. I have created let's say, an introduction. It's a 5-week course. It's called The Forge. I'll be giving that a plug tomorrow. That there is really around frame, power dynamics, and a few other components which are important for being able to bring yourself back to your center without all the rest of the nonsense. You know, I'm a no nonsense guy. It is very direct. You know, I'll do a few more videos on that. And I suppose you guys will see a different tune to me over the next few weeks. More so, I suppose I'll go there, is that I made a choice back in, let's say, 2011. I could be facetious and say, I didn't have a choice, but I did. And I chose to follow a dreaming path. And wow, I'm not going to get, you know, too into it because it would more come across as, you know, just some more spiritual warrior talk that you have all heard before. But a primary component of it was this period of time we're about to step into and moving forward. So everything that I've done over the last, you know, let's say 12 years has been for that, you know, almost one step into the future. And it's an exciting time. It really is. Depending upon how you actually want to look at it. And it's a choice, because what was once is no more. And we are in a little bit of a limbo. But, and I mean this, you know, hand on heart. Everybody has an opportunity right now to assess where they're actually really at. Ask some really quality questions, and not just where technology is going, but let's utilize the word quantum, and let's put science, magic, and technology into the quantum bracket. And it's exciting because all knowledge and information is at your fingertips. If you can firmly place yourself where you are on that sliding scale of ignorance and fraud, and accept the fact that some things that you think you know, you don't know, well, there's a beautiful opportunity for you to upskill and look at things from a completely different perception, degree of separation, and perspective. And it's an exciting time if you're an outlaw and you're a maverick. Don't waste it playing silly games that all have a platform around emotionalism and reacting from a pure sense of someone needing their story to continually reanimated because that's their only agency in life. And lock into your center and listen and see with eyes true so that you can open. And lastly on that, and you guys can go and check this one out. It's it has to do with like racing car drivers and let's say motorbike riders. You know, the really good ones, you know, we can call it the zone, is that when they go faster, they talk about how things slow down. You know, the faster they're going, like things slow down. And, you know, us kind of folks that don't get to play in that arena, you know, that they're in the zone, but they've got a whole range of different things going. Yeah, the blood's pumping, the adrenaline's going, and all the rest of those components. But the reason being why they say everything is slowing down is because their perceptions of the world have opened, because it's It's actually closed in. One of the greatest sportsmen of all time, Michael Jordan, as much as, you know, you can class him as a arrogant asshole, which he is, but you listen to his mentality, and he was a mystic on the basketball court. You know, there's a consistency with all the rest of these men and women that have been at the top of their game, that have been able to actualize that state. And there's a consistency with all of them. The consistency is they knew 100% exactly where they were at, and they had something to bounce off with. And that was themselves of getting better every day, going further than anyone else would, you know, almost like maniac in that sense. I'm not saying for you to go and do that, but do you need the adversary? Yeah, which is what the word Satan actually translates itself into. What adversaries do you need to have your character or your own self-importance to bounce off with? Or can you remove that out of the way and replace it with the rock that has you in it, and you're not making a sculpture of yourself? You're just removing away the limitations, each one at a time. And that's probably a conversation for another time, but I'm excited because many conversations are up right now, and it's fantastic. If you want to look at it as they're wrong, they're this, they're that, all the rest of it, went into that earlier. You guys can grab whatever you want out of that. But it's exciting because what it does show is that silent truths now are being spoken more and more and more. And the more that they continue, is that it creates a groundswell of the illusionary social contracts that are in place, that have been enforced by a gynocentric Hydra, get shown for what it actually is. Is it a big nothing? And when it is a big nothing and it has no teeth, you know, one of my myths is Dante's Inferno. Once again, it's probably a conversation for the lads. You've heard me say it over the time, over the journey, you know, going to have a walk with Dante. Well, if you've read that book, it is a myth, a grand one, in fact, because Dante walked through cycles or circles of hell, and he had a mentor, and he got to see the different realms or circles of hell. And if you translate that into the houses of the ego, there's a great teaching there for you that you can always come back to and see where you're actually playing, and call the demon forth in front of you to see it, not to conquer it in relation to shadow work, but see it for what it is, holding a piece of you in your own ignorance. And can you translate that into knowledge and light? But Dante, when he gets to the final boss, the final realm of hell, it's a frozen wasteland. And the devil, Satan, Lucifer, whatever name you want to call it, is there in a frozen state. Dante had a choice then, didn't he? Was he going to still need the adversary and need to fight it, understanding that it's an uncooperative zero-sum game to do so, because the more you fight it, the more it feeds, and it feeds on you and your own distortions? Or do you choose to go in another complete way? Because Dante climbed up onto old mate, and that's how he ascended. Now let's use ascension not from the channeler's new age terminology terms, but ascending into a new domain of knowing, a new octave of awareness, enabled to stabilize that. But it is not until you understand that that myth will continually play itself out. Which circle are you actually in? So there's a little sneak peek for all of you legends. When you've heard me say going for another walk with Dante, or even utilizing a little bit of Simon and Garfunkel, I think, hello darkness, my old friend. And all it's like, hello fucking Dante, my old friend. What walkabout are we going on today? So that I actually can see my own reflection within inside that circle, and what demon am I actually calling forth with my own programs, beliefs, and perceptions, and actually facing it and having a conversation, not running away into some type of butchered Carl Jung type of shadow work where it all becomes about me and there is actually no accountability for one's choices and one's actions within inside of that. It continually turns into a virtue woundology and language control of, oh yes, I do shadow work and I'm a forever victim. Everyone done all of these things to me. And it was my second grade teacher that didn't allow me to do that made me play out patterns and da-da-da. Shut the fuck up. Draw a line in the sand and be who you actually are without the story of what was once, because the future is determined by the past reanimating itself into the future. And if you pay so much accordance and intent into the agency of your story and your violin, well, which fucking game are you choosing to play? And that's Eagles mic drop for the moment for this evening. I'll catch you soon. And for the lads, hit me up. Let's have a chat. It's fucking game time. Solar Masculine Principle is in town. And if you really do want to play a serious game, then let's have a serious conversation. You've got an opportunity to be a living myth, yeah, and not the myth that has been pushed into you with all the rest of this fabrication of needing to be in your emotions and your vulnerability. No, you need to understand your center and the convictions of the pillars that give you the mind to be able to create a new domain of knowing with your hands underneath the sun at high noon. And these Fugazi cats that live in the blue light saloon, that's all they're going to do is talk. And as I said earlier, I'm convinced that a lot of them used to work at Foot Locker, because when their reality is challenged, all as they do is look at fucking shoes. Eagles out. Catch you next time.